buy-in from certain people, and just where does that start? Because that middle gap where there's ideas and then the employees are involved, but there's got to be something to get them involved. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think what's really happening, that's kind of the evolution from the social suggestion box into much more of a campaign-based approach. And let me talk about that. What a campaign is a kind of, it's a discrete kind of event built around a question. There's a particular question that a business sponsor, typically a senior executive inside an organization, they're actually looking at, and they're looking for fresh ideas, novel perspectives on how they're going to address that. And so these campaigns are what the basics of them are. They have a business sponsor. Again, like I said, typically a senior executive. They tend to be time boxed. They have a limited time because and that's important. It's important for a number of reasons. One of the key ones is usually when you're asking these questions, you're asking for something that's upcoming. As I said, an upcoming plan. So the reason it's time boxed is you need to kind of move. You need to get those ideas sooner so you can actually integrate them into your plans for the future, the upcoming future here. And so that's they're time boxed, and they really do revolve around a particular question. You form a question that's very specific to these plans you have coming up, and that's actually the basis on which you're asking people to provide their ideas. And then there's a lot of variation how you ask the question. You can ask a fairly wide open question, or you can be fairly targeted. And I think the type of question you ask depends on the type of ideas you're seeking. So when you ask the question, going into it, how wide or narrow do I want it? And a couple of things we've learned around that, just so you know. The way you ask the question, if you ask something that's fairly wide, you're going to get a wider kind of standard deviation of quality. Some really bad ideas, but some really potentially radical ideas that you never would have thought of. But you can also ask the question in a way that narrows it so that you only get a very specific set of ideas that align to certain criteria you already want. You're going to have less of the kind of quote-unquote bad stuff that you don't want to have to go through, but you're also probably going to limit potentially the upside of the radical ideas. But that's okay. It depends on the campaign and what you're seeking.
So with the campaigns, once a campaign gets set up, and we're talking about crowdsourcing and creating solutions to problems.
Right.
What is effective crowdsourcing? What needs to be there for crowdsourcing to be effective?
Yeah, that's good. I think you have to actually think in terms of first off, with the business sponsor, you've got to have that sponsorship. You have to have a pretty clear sense of what am I going to do with these ideas, and this is you as the business sponsor, as the innovation team who's helping run the campaign. In other words, when you get the ideas, what are you going to do with them? And I think one of the things that's really important, and again, this is one of the problems that the kind of social suggestion boxes suffered from, was there was no one there to really actively engage with the ideas. When it's something that's kind of extracurricular, outside of anything you're looking for, and you've got daily work you've got to get done, it can be hard to put in the time to go in and look at these sort of extra ideas. When it's a campaign related to something specifically you're working on, you're suddenly now much more engaged. You as the business unit who's running it, or the business sponsor. And so that engagement, so that's important. Be prepared to engage with employees, or I'll even extend it, even if you work with customers or suppliers in an open innovation realm, be ready to engage with them. And that means, responding to their ideas, letting them know what you think of them, those kinds of things. So that's a part of it. You also have to then think in terms of, okay, I've got these ideas, but I often say if you do nothing but to collect ideas, all you've done is a glorified discussion for them. You then have to actually work through the ideas to actually figure out which ones are worth actually even doing an evaluation on. And we're going to talk about evaluation in a second. But that notion of you get like 200 ideas. You're probably not going to want to do an in-depth evaluation of all 200. You just don't have the manpower, the capacity internally typically to do that. So there's an important step there of, okay, how am I going to handle these ideas once I get them in? So there's first us the responding to them, but then you need to determine which ones are worth even going a little further to look at. So there's some methods you can do around that. Actually, that's a good way to use crowdsourcing. Many eyes, many people looking in a distributed fashion at those different ideas can help you with their votes, their comments. How they actually respond to the different ideas can be a clear indicator of which ideas have more merit. You also enlist your experts to perhaps, based on keywords or something, find some of the best ideas among those 200 in our example, and determine which ones are worth actually, okay, maybe we'll actually evaluate these. You then have to actually make the final cut. Okay, so if I've had 200 ideas, and let's say the crowd likes about 40, and my experts like another 10, I've got 50 ideas. Are we ready to do an evaluation of all 50? Even 50 might be a bit much, so there's steps you can take to actually winnow that down with simple kind of up-down, kind of, the experts sort of do a quick, yes, I want to evaluate, or no, kind of a triage mode. And then we actually do full evaluations, and that's so key. I think that's one of the things that I think really is sort of, when you think of crowdsourcing as growing up, I think crowdsourcing from using more of a campaign-based structure, kind of a lot of the work ahead of time of lining up your sponsors, lining up the criteria for which you're going to evaluate the ideas. This is the maturation, and then the actual evaluation itself is so critical. And I think it's one of the things that distinguishes, I guess, the innovation management realm from other social business initiatives. There actually is, judgment passed, if you will, against some of the ideas, and that comes in the form of these assessments, these evaluations done by experts. And they'll actually do a formal evaluation going through the idea, through the different ideas, and from that, so to your earlier question, an important step there is, well, how am I going to evaluate these ideas? For every campaign, the basis of evaluation is going to differ. If I'm asking for cost-cutting ideas, my evaluation is going to look like one way. If I'm looking for ways to enhance the customer experience, my evaluation is going to be different. So another part of to be ready to run these things is to also know, how am I going to evaluate these ideas when I get them? And so that's an important element too.
Okay.
So once you get through these evaluations, what you'll end up with are a set of ideas that are the ones that you really want to go after, the ones that merit further work. And then depending on the types of ideas, if you've got ideas that are fairly large in scope or perhaps high in uncertainty, you might want to go further. Let's do a business case. We may even want to do a validation workflow. If it's fairly clear cut that you're going to do that idea, don't waste your time with that. Go right to implementation. Get going on the idea.